going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I don't know about you guys, I'm super excited for springtime. I know I've been in the studio here making a bunch of these down and dirties. I'm eager to get back out in the field. Starting next week, I will be in a dozer, and I'm gonna have a couple dozer down and dirties coming out for you guys. Super pumped about that. But in the meantime, I wanna continue our How to Start a Business series, and today we're gonna talk about how to bid a job. We're not gonna go through actual numbers because, let's be honest, this is the secret sauce, guys. This is when you get into the industry and you start competing with Joe Blow down the road. This is where the magic happens right here. So I'm not gonna get into actual numbers. We're not gonna get hyper specific, but I do want to at least convey the concepts, how we think about things, and how we kind of proceed with a job bid. So let's go through a hypothetical situation here. Let's say we're gonna dig a basement, we're gonna put in a septic system, and then we're also going to do a small retaining wall, because why not? Now, that's probably not realistic to a real job because you're not going to do a landscape retaining wall in the middle of a basement build and a new construction. But regardless, we're going to talk about it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, what kind of equipment do we need? Hopefully you have the equipment. Hopefully you already have a good understanding of what equipment you need, but let's kind of walk through that first step. So I know for a fact, because it's a basement dig, I'm gonna need a decent sized excavator, probably a 15-ton machine. And let's just say in this hypothetical, I don't have a 15-ton machine. Well, right there, we already know we're gonna have some rental fees. So let's account for those. I would highly advise you to fire up an Excel spreadsheet when you do these bids for two reasons. One, computers are going to just be more accurate when it comes to math, especially when we have to do these complex things where we're adding a lot of factors together. Two, you can actually go back and double check your math with Excel. It's really easy to do. Number three, we now have a digital version of this bid that I would highly encourage you to save so that if you have to come back and update your numbers, you can do so. So yes, pop open Excel. Even Google Docs will work just fine for you. Figure out how to use that with a couple YouTube videos. You can get pretty halfway decent to where you could put together a simple bid. So that's number one, do that. So let's go back. We're gonna have some rental fees because we need an excavator, right? We're also gonna have to have, and by the way, that's gonna include trucking too. Make sure you don't forget trucking. We are gonna have to bring our skid steer out for this project. So I'm gonna have a mobilization fee, and mobilization fees are totally up to you. I will tell you that $1,500 to $2,500 for a mobilization fee for any sort of a project is a reasonable amount. You do not need to skimp on the mobilization fees because it is going to cost you money to get to the job, right? You got to spend diesel. You're going to have wear and tear on your truck and trailer. You have to prep the equipment. There's a lot that goes into just mobilizing your equipment to get to the job. Don't shortchange yourself. So we've got our mobilization fee covered. We're going to have our excavator rental covered. You need to know roughly how long it's going to take you to dig that basement. Again, that comes with experience in the industry, but you need to get an idea for that. So you're gonna have rental fees. Now, let's talk about the basement portion for a second here. So let's say it's gonna take us 12 hours to dig that basement, assuming we use this 15-ton excavator we're renting. You need to account for fuel. You need to account for DEF. Now, we don't need to account for wear and tear on the machine because it's a rental that's already factored into the rental fee. We don't need to worry about that. But if it's a piece of equipment we own, absolutely we need to factor some money in for, let's call it a skid steer. You're gonna have track wear, you're gonna have bucket cutting edge wear, you're gonna have just regular maintenance on the machine that happens that you have to account for. That all needs to factor into your numbers. But going back to our excavator and our basement dig, one of the biggest mistakes I see new guys make is you don't account for your time. I don't know about you guys, but my time is valuable. $60 an hour valuable, and that's on the low side. So you better bet that over that 12-hour period it's going to cost me to dig the basement, I'm going to be charging the homeowner for all of my mobilization, for all of my machine rental, for all of my materials. And you better be sure I'm charging $60 an hour for yours truly to sit in the seat and operate that machine. So don't forget about yourself, your actual labor costs that you want to make. Now, another thing, just as an initial thing you need to think about when bidding these jobs, overhead costs. Do you have a shop? Probably. Do you have a QuickBooks subscription? Probably. You've got all of these things that are costing you money as an owner, and you need to somehow factor for those. A way that I do it, and this is just me personally, is I try to take all of my overhead costs, you know, internet, my QuickBooks subscription, any electricity, and what my roughly monthly bills are that go towards the business. If you're renting a shop, you need to account for that. Take all of that stuff that's just normal operating costs and divide those by a rough count, doesn't have to be exact, roughly how many working days you have in a year. So let's say I'm going to work probably 200 days this year. I would take all of my costs and I would divide that by 200 working days, and that will give me a per day cost that I should be charging to cover my overhead. And so now we're going to factor that into our basement dig. Let's say the basement, the septic, and the retaining wall, we factor we're going to be on the job for, well, let's call it 2 weeks. Well, all in 2 weeks. You need to account for 10 working days worth of overhead costs when you do your bid. So you need to factor that in. It needs to be its own, not a line item for the customer, but it needs to be a line item in your Excel spreadsheet so that you can mentally keep track of that. So we have mobilization fee. We have our excavator costs. Again, don't forget fuel, don't forget def. That's going to be a daily, you know what you need to pay. And then we're going to multiply that by the number of days that excavator is going to be out running on the job. So we need to account for that. Now, I don't know about you guys, in our area, when we dig basements, every once in a while, we have to install the sump crock. It's just one of the things. You need to go price a sump crock, figure out what that's going to cost you, and then you need to mark your materials up. Now, material markups are another one of those things. It's totally up to you. Some guys mark it up 20%, some guys mark it up 60%. Again, this is where you start getting into the secret sauce of how people get to their numbers. Now, are we going to have to haul any dirt off? Well, if we're going to have to haul dirt off, you're going to have to factor in a truck. Do you own the truck? No? Well, that means you're going to have to contract a truck at an hourly rate. Roughly how many hours is it going to take you to offload X amount of dirt? Okay, let's do a quick calculation here. I'm not going to do the actual calculation because I don't have a calculator, but let's say this basement, for round numbers, is a 10 by 10 basement and it's 10 feet deep. So the way you figure out how many yards that is you multiply 10 feet by 10 feet. That gets us our square area on the ground. So we have 100 feet squared. That's our surface area at the top. Now it's 10 feet deep, so we need to multiply it by another 10 feet to get our vertical component. So now we have our cube that we're gonna dig out of the earth, 10 by 10 by 10. Well, 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000. That's 1,000 cubic feet. Now comes the magical number. We need to convert that over to yards. Well, if you think about a one-dimensional yardstick, a yard is 3 feet, right? But we're in 3 dimensions because we have a length, we have a width, and we have a depth of our basement. So we need to divide by 27 because 3 times 3 times 3. So we've got a conversion factor on the width, conversion factor on the length, conversion factor on the depth, and each one of those are 3 feet. So 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. That's how you get to that magical 27 number that people talk about when you're converting from cubic feet to cubic yards. And one thing I want to say specific here, let's say we were bidding driveway material, and we were only going to put down 6 inches of material, and it's an 8-foot long driveway by 50 feet long. That's going to be 8 times 50 times 0.5 because 6 inches is half a foot. The key when you're converting from cubic feet to cubic yards is that all of your measurements have to be in the same, unit of measurement. That's what I'm trying to look for. So we have to stick with feet. You can't have feet and inches in there. You've got to have feet in order for that conversion to work. So we're going to take our total yards for our basement dig. We're going to divide that by 27. I'm not about to do that math because I don't, like I said, we're not doing this live. I'm sorry, guys, we're not doing it live. But that figure is going to give you your cubic yards that you're going to excavate out of that basement. And now you have to factor in for fluff. Because what happens, we've all had a nice fluffed pile of dirt, and then you leave it for a couple weeks and it rains and everything, and then all of a sudden that dirt kind of settles. You have hard packed yards and then you have fluffed yards. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your cubic yards that you excavated out of your basement and roughly multiply it by 25%. So 1.25 is the factor you're gonna multiply there. That's gonna kind of give you what we call trucking yards. That's how much you're actually gonna have to truck off site. And now to figure out how long you're gonna have to run your truck for, you're gonna have to take trucking yards and divide it by how much your truck can hold. That's gonna give you how many rounds you have. And then you need to figure out how many rounds your truck can do in a day. So let's say I have one truck running and our dump site's 20 minutes down the road. So we've got 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back, that's 40 minutes. It's probably gonna take me about 10 minutes to load them, and it's gonna take him probably 10 minutes to dump. So realistically, it's gonna be an hour round trip for that truck to get loaded, go dump, come back and get loaded. So you're gonna have to take all of your cubic yards, divide it by how much your truck holds, and then figure out how many rounds your truck can do in a day. And that's gonna give you how many days you need to rent your truck for. So these are all the things you have to take into consideration just to dig a basement. Now let's flip over to our septic. On the septic side, we're gonna do essentially the same thing. We're gonna figure out roughly how much material we need to excavate, and we can do some quick grade shots and we can figure that out. So you're gonna have to account for the excavation. Again, how much time, how much fuel, how much depth are you gonna need? We need to account for all of the grease and everything. And again, this is just, 2 or 3 tubes of grease a day, roughly. It's, I don't know, $5, $6, I don't know, however much you wanna throw in. You need to account for the small things. But here's where we start getting into material. So with a septic, you're gonna have a septic tank. You're gonna have rigid core pipe. You're gonna have foam core pipe. You're gonna have stone. You're gonna have sand. All of those are materials that you're gonna have to calculate the volume that you need for your aggregates. You're gonna need to know how many sticks of pipe. You're gonna need to know what size tank. And then you're going to have to upcharge all of those. You're gonna have to put a margin on all of those. And again, how much you mark up is totally up to you. That's the secret sauce. It's gonna be the same for our retaining wall project when we go out there. How much block are we gonna need? What kind of footing material are we gonna need? How deep is that footing going to need to be? Are we gonna have to bring a jumping jack out? Or are we gonna have to bring a plate compactor? You need to charge for those. It's not gonna be a tremendous astronomical amount, but 60 to 100 bucks a day for a plate compactor is totally reasonable to throw into a bid. You need to account for all of the steps, and I will say this is one of the most important things when you're doing a bid. Mentally walk through your day. Don't just hit the high level items. Mentally walk through your day, because you're gonna forget things like pipe glue. You're gonna forget things like, oh, I needed all of those fittings so that I could take my pipe coming out of the tank and 90 degree it and then 45 it and 45 it again to get over to where the field's gonna go. If you don't account for those things, guess what? You're paying for them out of your pocket. So I will say, bidding a job can be really easy or really complex depending on what kind of job it is. And I apologize that I don't have a spreadsheet running, but like I said, this really is where you start getting into how individuals make their money. You start getting into some trade secrets, some industry experience here that really separates guys that are new in the industry from the old guys who have been around the block and really know their stuff. And that's why I'm not comfortable really giving you all of the secret sauce right here, is because you will have to learn this yourself over time. It's also a great idea to create a really good relationship with another contractor in your area so that you can call and ask questions of that contractor. And by all means, I have offered it 1,000 times on this channel. Reach out to me personally. I will respond. contact@dieselandironproductions.com. Feel free to reach out with questions. I have no problem helping you as you kind of go down this path. And just be aware, you're gonna get burned. At one point in time, you're gonna bid a job, you're gonna forget something, and you're gonna get burned. That's how we all learned our lessons in this industry. The key is, do as much homework on the front end so that you prevent yourself from getting burned too bad on the back end when you accidentally screw up. So I hope this has been helpful. This really just starts to scratch the surface of what's involved in a bid process, but it does give you an idea of the way that we think. You have to cover your costs on everything you do, and then you have to make sure that you factor in for your labor and for other people's labor if you're gonna have people working with you on the job. You have to make money on every aspect of this job. None of this job should come out of your pocket, including the mobilization of your equipment. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them down below. Feel free to shoot me an email if you've got more in-depth questions that I can't really answer here on camera. I'm more than happy to help you guys out. We'll catch you guys on the next Down and Dirty.